Kristen Fitzpatrick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
I am so honored. It's a Friday afternoon. Thank you. And I'm honored for a few reasons. One of the reasons is with my podcast, I've been talking with a lot of people about career development, specifically being at life and career inflection points. And when I was thinking about who I'd like to invite on the program, there's no one I've met in my career that has more experience in the career and professional development realm. So I'm really hoping to learn from you and your wisdom and insight. So thanks again.
Great to be here.
So to start, Kristen, where I wanted to begin, you've had a long and storied career. You've been at Harvard Business School for now 20 plus years, more than 2 decades. You're the senior managing director of alumni relations and career and professional development. Can you tell me a little bit about what drew you there originally and where you started out?
You're going to find this very boring, but I'm originally from Rhode Island, and anyone that's from Rhode Island, we don't drive far to get anywhere. For my internship, I had an opportunity actually back in Rhode Island working for CBS or starting up marketing in CPD. And I really wanted to get into marketing, and I didn't want to drive 45 minutes to get to work. So that is the deep thought that went into my internship. And when I got there, I was creating a lot. I was a department of one, and we were figuring everything out. This is the early 2000s of the career and professional development being a thing, coaching being a thing. And as the school started investing more and more and more in coaching and trying to make it a professional program and something that we could hang our hat on as a differentiator, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. And when I went back to HBS to finish my second year, I had to work 15 hours a week to keep my FTE open until I graduated so that I could still join the team. And I feel so lucky that I fell into this work, because as a chemical engineer, most people don't think, ooh, I'll be a coach. That makes logical sense. And most of my engineering friends don't like this stuff and kind of find it a little fluffy. It's not a lot of data goes into this. It's a lot of listening. There's a lot of feelings, and those don't typically gel with a lot of engineers. So I think I just fell into it. It always stayed interesting. So over the years, as my role grew, as I switched out of marketing and took on more roles, I never left coaching. That's always been a part of my job. And it continues to delight and surprise me. I don't see that changing. People are fascinating, and it makes the job fascinating.
Thank you, Kristen, as you were speaking about your background. So what I've learned so far, nuggets of wisdom, look for a job close. But also,
only if you're from Rhode Island.
There's no way you could have predicted that this is where you would land 20 plus years later.
No way.
Is there something to learn from that, especially from your coaching and what you've heard from students and alumni? Is that just how life works for most of the people as they're progressing in their career? It's a happy accident along the way.
I think a lot of people try and plan and control more than they probably should. I'm fairly spontaneous, I guess, when it comes to opportunities. And I don't plan so much as be curious about what else is out there. I was always interested in admissions. So I said, what would it take for me to be on the admissions board and learn a little bit more about that type of work? And you see the full cycle from admit to alumni, which is so cool. And it's a little bit different. You have to learn more about what's current for 26-year-olds, and it's fun. So I didn't do it because I was trying to hedge my bets of which director job was going to open up first, career services or admissions. And it's just because I liked it. A lot of my students, a lot of my alums try and plan and control. and think in fairly narrow terms about what could make them happy.
Well, that's what I'm wondering as well. Now, 20 plus years in at HBS, you couldn't have ever predicted this is where you'd end up ever. But I'm wondering, you talked about the love for the work and the love for the coaching. Now, doing this for so long, did you ever imagine you'd stay the majority of your career, all of your career at HBS? And if you didn't, what kept you here? Was it really the love of the work?
And the people. I've always worked with fantastic people. And the reality in the nonprofit world is if you're in it, you're choosing to be there because you're not paid what you would make in market rates. And it's not to say I never got irritated or frustrated or thought, I'm going to look elsewhere and interview. I did. And then I'd choose to stay because I think that when you even just go through the interview process and you start to evaluate, is the grass really greener or am I romanticizing something that's really bugging me right now? And usually I'm just romanticizing something that's bugging me. And just the interview process is enough for me to reconfirm and recommit and say, I want to stay here.
As a researcher with my background in research, when I started looking into, you've spent 20 plus years in this space. A couple of years ago, I started researching what's happening during that career inflection point in pivot areas. One of the big findings I saw is people think of pivots and inflection points as usually being this massive shift. And what I've been seeing is I've been interviewing people and talking to hundreds of people, not necessarily where you've been at the same organization for 20 years, but you've hit inflection points as well, I'm sure. And I shared this with you, Kristen. The bulk of my audience, they're women mid-career, midlife, who are in this, what I'm describing as this messy middle.
Yeah.
Wondering, even spending your career at HBS, have you had those moments of inflections where you've had to make a call or a messy middle? And if so, what were they?
My first daughter, I didn't have to make a decision around, will I work? Because I already had committed to the full-time role at HBS. And when I found out I was pregnant with her, because I came in married, we'd already been married 5 years. I knew I wanted kids. I didn't have to think, what kind of job do I want? Because I'd already decided HBS was it. This is where I want to be. And I already knew it was reasonable. You work hard, but work isn't everything. That's a decision. I had friends that were working until 3, 4 in the morning every day because they're working on a deal. I couldn't have done that with a newborn. I could barely function after 8 o'clock at night. For me to be in a job where you have to function at a high level after 8 o'clock at night, that just wasn't going to be a fit. I didn't have an inflection point with my first daughter because I'd already committed to this. But the twins, they almost did me in. I mean, that was, first of all, they were a surprise. And I didn't find out that they were twins until the 20-week ultrasound. And we reassessed a lot. But because they were so high risk, their umbilical cords were knotted and tied around each other. So I had to be admitted to the hospital at viability at 24 weeks so that they could take them if they started to fail, because monopregnancies have a very high fatality rate. Between the 20-week ultrasound and my 24-week checkup, it was just us figuring things out, like how are we going to make this work? And then I was admitted. So I was at my 24-week checkup. They admitted me. Work was, I can't even tell you how fantastic. They set up a remote office for me. And in 2005, that's not common. So I had my laptop. I had a friend who worked for Cisco. He brought in a router because that also wasn't common. They had one of those old Star Trek sort of satellite phones that I used to do conference calls.
I remember those.
It was awesome. My marketing team would come in for meetings. They thought it was fun. So I worked for the last 2 months of the pregnancy until we had to take the babies at 32 weeks. And that was an inflection point. They were, I mean, you know how exhausting a baby is. So 2 babies with an almost 2-year-old is like a level of exhaustion that I don't remember 2005. Things happened that are just like gone. So that was hard. That was hard. But I'm not a baby kind of mom. I'm more of a 4-year-old and up kind of. I didn't want to stay home with them because I don't really like babies that much. And then all the years of trying to balance the coaching, of the kids' teams, the being there, the feeling present, having your own work team. And it was very difficult.
Well, parenthood and motherhood, you were talking at the beginning about one thing that people can think about. Stop planning so much. If anything, motherhood and parenthood teaches you can't predict, you can't plan. When you were sharing your story, Kristen, I was thinking about when I'm talking to moms in my own story, anything that you predicted would happen is not what comes up, both positives and negatives. Like I think about while I was pregnant, I was concerned about my pregnancy. Pregnancy was great. We had challenges after my son was born. Like you can't predict.
No.
And that's one lesson as well when you're becoming a mom.
Yes. Yeah. And now it's probably harder just because you have social media and everyone's comparing stories. And thank God that didn't exist because it would have given me even more to worry about. As it was, like your little mom neighborhood network gives you enough.
Yeah. Well, I said, Kristen, I was so excited to speak with you, given your expertise in this area. There's a question that I've been asking all of the powerhouse leaders like you, who I speak with, about if you could go back again and speak to your younger self, what piece of advice and nugget of wisdom would you give? With your lens, you're giving advice and nuggets of wisdom to these kids, not kids, adults who are early in their schooling and early in the career and giving them advice. So I'd love to hear your answer to both questions. What advice would you give to your younger self? And what comes up with alumni when they're first going out on their journey? What do you tell them? But starting with you.
I would have worried a little bit less about money. I feel like I could have contracted more and made my life easier. And I think it would have been a lot easier on me if I hadn't been so cheap.
Is it cheap or financially responsible? This is something I wonder.
I was very financially responsible. And even still, our 30s were so difficult. We're on a budget. I couldn't go into Target for like a year and a half because I can't walk out of there for less than $200. So I just don't go in the store. I think I added stress to my life more than I probably needed to. Hard to know, but I look at my friends now that have young kids and they have a housekeeper or they just pay for the certain things that make life easier. I probably could have done that more.
I'm wondering, is that one piece of advice that you're giving to the HBS grads when they're leaving? If they're asking you for advice, do you talk about that?
I talk about money. I do make sure that they understand what living within their means looks like and what choices they're making now affect their opportunities later. It's especially relevant with my alumni that live in very expensive cities where you have to have the private school. And I say have to, but a lot of people choose to put their kids in private school or have the multiple nannies, the multiple houses. You are building a life that locks you into a certain career. And you have to think about that as a choice. You are choosing to build a life that costs a lot of money to maintain.
The reason I asked you this question, and you're leading into it, Kristen, I've been thinking about the women in midlife who I've been working with who hit this messy middle and they're trying to decide what's next. There's a very different discourse for the women who have throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s been very fiscally responsible versus the women who are really still struggling and figuring how they'll stay afloat. It seems like there's two sides of a coin. You felt like you may have been a little too cheap, but it also sets you up for having so much agency when you do hit that messy middle. What is that balance for people?
I think it's being honest with your partner. Have to agree. If you and your partner also have potentially a financial planner that can be a neutral barrier for a lot of these conversations. And it is all about priorities and where we agree as a family, what we agree we're going to prioritize. And we wanted to be able to spend significant time together as a family where we have dinner every night. That's a non-negotiable for most of the kids' childhood. And even if we were dealing with sports or whatever, we sort of worked around the schedules to have family dinner. So that was important to us and we prioritized it. It comes at a cost career-wise to have you home for dinner. We felt that was worth it.
Do you still feel, even where you are now, it was a detriment in terms of your career path and career growth, taking that time for your family? I'm surprised by that, given from the outside looking at your profile, it looks like you were skyrocketing at every stage.
It depends how you define skyrocketing. I was still working hard on something I cared about, which meant I wasn't counting hours. It didn't bother me to sign back on after the kids went to bed. I didn't count my time. That's not how I viewed work. It was, who needs help? Can I help them? Not at 4:00, but I can talk to you at 7. And it's making my life and my work more of a web. If I needed to run to a field day in the middle of the day, I did. But if I needed to be at an event at night or travel on the weekend, I did. I never had like a hard this or that. It was always a blend. You should see the spreadsheets I would have to leave when I was gone for a week or two. It was like the subject line, while mommy's in China, and all the days of coverage and who had what and things that needed to be brought to school and reminders. It was hard, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah, there's something I've been wanting to really get your take on. There's a perception of Harvard Business School and Harvard Business School alums that I hear in my circles. When you think of HBS, an HBS alum is the cream of the crop. The perception is thriving at all times, growing. And, could that be true for some? Yes. But I'm curious, in these messy times, there's the economy is uncertain. There's tech layoffs, people mid-career, even before things seem so uncertain. AI is disrupting things. Can you tell us what it's like for HBS alumni, specifically the ones mid-career and senior career? How are things?
I don't think you're removed from anything. I feel like the insulation of an HBS degree is probably more opportunities that could potentially be there. You're far more likely to be able to pick up the phone or send an email and have it be answered. In this economy, in the job search right now, I don't know how you do it without a network. I don't know how you are found in the black hole of applications that every job seems to have. If you're not comfortable chatting with others and keeping that network up at a very authentic level, I don't even know if the HBS brand will help you. You do need to stay current, accessible, curious to still be competitive.
Well, and it seems like everyone's feeling the pain. With you leading both alumni relations and career and professional development, you're speaking with HBS alum, HBS students at very different stages in their career. For a while during this mess, I had the hypothesis and assumption that this economy and the tech layoffs and business layoffs were affecting mainly mid-career and senior career. But I'm wondering, back to what you said, it's like a lottery system applying for roles. Every role, there's 800, 900, 1,000 plus applicants. I spend less time with how are recent alums doing? How are they finding roles?
The classes we're working with right now, we've been emphasizing what is networking? What is the art of small talk? These are kids that like wouldn't pick up a phone and order a pizza. Like they do everything online. So how do you make that more comfortable? How do you make it feel more natural? So we're spending a ton of time on communication and making it a two-way street it's a comfort level that we just have to practice. For my younger alumni, if they had plenty of in-person work and they weren't super impacted by the pandemic, they've been okay. They've been able to maintain the networks and find a new place where their skills are going to be valued and have enough folks on the inside to at least look at their application and be found. And our alumni have such fantastic judgment that in this world that's so topsy-turvy and you don't know where things are going to land, they have a very good sense of what's important, what to pay attention to. And they're not just putting things in ChatGPT and saying, summarize this for me and give me all the important points.
No.
Like, they're thinking about it. So I feel like our case method sets you up to be able to think on your feet. And I'm not going to say the case method is AI proof because nothing is, but it's pretty easy to go beyond surface level when you've been taught by the case method. So I feel like our alumni can really lean on that as core to their identity and something that helps them stand out from someone who is relying on AI agents to help them sound better.
Mm-hmm. In these conversations, Kristen, we get really real and raw. And I wanted to give you, okay, so here's a case study that I'd love to get your perspective. I mentioned to you a bunch of my audience, it's not all women, but the majority are mid-career or senior career folks. And many of them are in tech. And tech is a mess in and of itself with many, many layoffs. AI is disrupting things. I did mention women mid-career, but what I also mean, a bunch of women in their 50s and early 60s trying to figure out what's next. They've had very successful careers in tech. They've hit an age that makes things more challenging, just being real and raw. And I'm sure you've worked with alums that are at this stage, had very, very successful careers, career women, skyrocketed up, depending on what we mean, but had very successful careers. They hit this 50, 60 point, and they're not seen as much. And when you have those conversations, do you have recommendations for women at that stage? They're badasses, they're powerhouses, and in this market, they're feeling unseen. What would you recommend for them?
A lot of it depends on whether or not they're looking for one role to be their everything, or if they're open to an assortment of opportunities that together check all the boxes that they're looking for. And I think a lot of our alumni are more open to portfolio careers now. Christina Wallace is a professor we have here at HBS, and she's a HBS alum herself. And she wrote a book on the portfolio life of not this either or, but what about and? What if you did all of these different things and they were meaningful to you in many ways, even just opening up that line of communication? Or do you need to be the head of product? And that's the only thing that's going to check. Let's have that conversation, but be honest with yourself. Is that as important at 55 as it was when you were 30? Might not be. And you might be looking for work to provide other things, and you're not ready to retire. You want to be challenged. You still want to make some money, but the title and the prestige sometimes becomes less important.
Can I get your take on something? So I had a recent conversation with a product leader. Her name's Bosky Mukherjee. And I had her on and I gave her the same sort of scenario. The women, 50s, 60s, they weren't women who had hit CPO level. What I've been seeing in my research is a lot of those women, if you've been a CPO, there's still opportunities for you. It's been more of the director level, senior director level, where in the tech market, a lot of organizations are looking for cheaper labor, younger labor. And her recommendation when I said, what should those people do at the director, senior director, like you, she was saying portfolio careers. She said the likelihood for many of these women, despite their network, getting another full-time job and that being it is low. And she was just trying to be real and honest that just like you, she said, thinking about a portfolio career or potentially thinking about starting something of your own. And
Mm-hmm.
is that what you're really encouraging? It's a shift for many women in their 50s or 60s to think that doesn't feel like the safe route that they've held in their career, but maybe it's the safest bet going forward, focusing on a portfolio career or starting something on your own. I'm curious your take.
Starting something on your own is
Not
very
easy.
different from a portfolio career. I mean, it is pretty risky and depends how much capital you have and how long you can ride out no income. So I think that you'd really have to talk about like the family situation and can you handle that? For women that got to what I would consider a comfortable level where they have a team, they're in charge of certain things, they are operating at a level that where they feel like they could keep doing it for a very long time. I think we could find something similar. If you're good at managing, if you're good at seeing where the puck's going to be and skating there, I still think that those skills are going to be needed. I think you need to stay current on what the difference is now for the students coming out of school and what looks like a good interview. Because I don't think you can just go in and talk about what you've done in the past. I think you need to come in with some sort of minimal viable product of what you would propose for features that should be in place because you looked at the ideas page of that company's website and you developed ideas. So you just have to take it up a notch when you're interviewing to show that you have the experience and the skills that are worth the investment in another director.
Yep, absolutely. Kristen, career reinvention, specifically for alumni coming through HBS, mid-career specifically. I wouldn't be surprised if the same themes come up over and over with HBS alumni that I'm hearing, where people hit a point in their career oftentimes where they've been very successful, but that career is no longer feeling aligned with who they are now. And they're no longer fulfilled. They're burned out and they hit this point and they're thinking, oh, time to reinvent. When you think of mid-career reinvention, how would you describe that?
I don't know if anyone really reinvents themselves. I think they lean more into the parts of their life that they already really enjoy, but maybe they're not getting paid for it, or it's not enough of their role to give them that sense of satisfaction. One of the exercises we do with our alumni is called the 4 elements of career and life decision making. It was developed by Dr. Tim Butler, who's on our team. He's a psychologist who's spent his entire working life on career decisions. And we're so lucky to have him. His research allows us to go deeper into your identity and your skills and what makes you uniquely good at something that if we were to call friends and family or people that you've worked with, say, what are you known for being uniquely good at, and get at the essence of your skill, they're probably already doing it to some degree. They just want to do it more. And then with the exercise, we talk a little bit more about what sort of community do you want to be surrounded by? What's your work environment? What kind of people are you with? What sort of results are you going to be striving for that feel right? Little bit on necessity. Certainly people still might have medical needs or some sort of childcare or parent care needs. So you kind of have to take all that in. But then the last part that really gets our alumni going is called Horizon. And that is, what does a life at its fullest look like? And this is when we really start to get into what's meaningful. It's thinking about a person who you feel had a meaningful life and why. How did they live life at its fullest? What does that mean to you? That's where we start. Those are the questions that start us building what that next thing is going to be for them. You know, what's a common trait? The confidence to try. That takes such bravery to leave the unknown and go into this and not worry about what other people are going to say. That you have to be pretty brave.
Absolutely. The horizon work you're doing with alumni, there's been a theme when I'm working with the women, we sort of design multiple futures. One is if I were to keep going on the path I'm on, make some really nice improvements, live a really, really good life, what would that look like? And they map that out and they envision that. But they also do, similar to what you're saying, they start thinking about what's their best life? What's their wildly audacious life? And they map that out. And what's fascinating is that the women present those vision documents back to the other women in the cohort.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is they preface their big life, their wildly audacious life as, oh, this is unreasonable. I couldn't really do this. That fear piece starts coming into play. And the other women go, why is this unreasonable? I could see how you could incrementally get there. I'm wondering, do you see that? And what do you think is at work there when people share that big life with others? They think it can't happen, but objective people are like, of course it can. Is it fear?
Yeah. And I think that's probably the part of Harvard that holds you back is you're afraid of failure. You're afraid that you won't be doing something that's successful enough, which is fear.
How do, and I know there's many Harvard professors and HBS professors and your team thinking through this. I'm thinking about the things that prevent people from moving forward in the emotions. I know there's a lot of literature around immunity to change coming out of Harvard. For those people who know what they want to do next and they're stuck, and when this happens, when you're coaching folks, what are one or two things that you'd recommend that they do tomorrow to help start thinking about getting unstuck?
I mean, I think it's exactly that. That's small. That's incremental. That's your best next step. Just do it. And what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing that could happen? What's the most likely thing that could happen? And those all came from anxiety exercises I did when one of the twins was 11. And it's like totally relevant for any stage of life. So I still use that. And for most people, when they look at the worst thing that could happen, can you live with that? All right, then give it a shot.
I think that really helps though. When you're just feeling scared, but you haven't put concrete thoughts into what is that worst possible scenario. You're just scared. You're feeling things. You're not really thinking about, is this really, could I not handle this? And when you actually put the concrete scenario, you know what? Usually we can handle it. You know, I love that technique. So what was happening when your kids were 11?
She had so much anxiety. And it was manifesting in physical ways where she wasn't eating the way she should be. And the doctor was like, let's just try this because she's catastrophizing and it's not coming from a rational place. So let's help her see that. And I have literally used this exercise since. I mean, the twins are 20 now. It's still very relevant.
I'm going to use this exercise. Thank you, Kristen. I'm wondering, you spoke to HBS alum and HBS students. They have such strategic thinking skills. They also have gone through the case method at HBS. There's also another characteristic of HBS, the level of community that students and alums have, where I think it's a real differentiator for HBS. And we're all talking about these days, the way forward is not on our own. It's about cultivating our community. Can you speak to this? At HBS, I know a little bit about the model for the students, but how do they stay together when they're in school? But I'm assuming they stay together and connected after as well.
They do. I mean, while they're in school, I think that the sections that they have, they're sort of their family while they're students. And those continue through graduation. And that's where I think social media has been amazing. So you feel connected. You feel like you can reach out to anybody and they'll reply to you. I mean, the CEO of Shell is in my section. And if I text YL, he'll answer me. So I feel like that's a level of comfort that comes from knowing each other in your 20s. For the people that you weren't in section with, we created alumni circles, probably 5-10 years ago. It was before the pandemic. And those were meant to be communities for women based on where you live, and were intentionally diverse in age and stage and marital status and in all the things, and were small enough to have good conversations, but big enough so you don't feel overly exposed. So sort of 6 to 10 people. And those circles have been a very authentic way for people to connect and create real relationships and get life advice from people above you, people below you. And it helps everybody to see the similarities. Even as the technology changes and the circumstances changes, certain things are forever true.
Can you talk about the alumni circles? I'm curious how structured they are, because I've seen some circles and some organizations, depending on how you execute on it, you want to plan a bit, but not make it so controlled where the community and the women don't own the circle. And I'm wondering what lessons you've learned along the way. I'm assuming not all circles are the most engaged circles. Like, if you learn lessons along the way, I've seen some circles just disappear and dissipate versus some you become best friends, sometimes like family. And I'm wondering what you've seen leads to that circle that really works, where there's magic.
It starts when people really commit in the sign up. So we are unapologetic that this is a commitment and you need to try to be there every month. Obviously, if you get sick or some spontaneous work trip comes up, you can skip it. But in general, it is a level of commitment that can be very hard for our alumni. They like to keep their options open until the last second. I'm not going to commit to this until I know I have no better options. So that commitment has been very important, along with a solid facilitator. So we train the facilitators. Somebody has to volunteer to be a facilitator, which interestingly, in this group, you would think everyone would want to be in charge. And yet, no, not when it comes to this. They're like, actually, you do it. You be in charge. This is my fun place and I don't want to be in charge. So getting enough facilitators was actually harder than we expected. Keeping them trained has been enjoyable. They're people who like listening and keeping things moving, and just renewing every year and saying you want to recommit, you want to stay in your circle. Sometimes we have to mix up the circles a little bit, but it's also having a facilitator who's comfortable being a mirror for someone who might not see that they are oversharing or taking up too much airtime or not having the best social manners. So the facilitators are very important in keeping things going.
I had wondered the mix of women at different career stages, different life stages, different ages. It sounds like, no, it doesn't sound like it was a deliberate, intentional choice on the team's part. I'd love to hear to what degree there is this notion that having people at similar career stages, life stages, they'll know you and see you in a way that they might not otherwise. Why having this range? Why is that the way to go? What has worked so effectively with that approach?
It was important to us to create cross-generational community because there's no natural way for that to happen. Unions, we separate you by class year. Obviously, when you're on campus, you kind of stay with your own year. You don't even mix that much with the year above or below you. And at work, your friends tend to be your peers. So you never quite get that level of comfort with someone 10 or 20 years your senior. You might have a mentor. You might have someone who really looks out for you and guides you, but that's a lopsided relationship and the power dynamic is not even. So this is a far more even power dynamic, and the women with more experience, the women that are 20, 30 years into their careers, listen in a different way because they're managing those younger women. And as they're talking about their struggles or they're talking about their frustrations, they're clocking that away as like, ooh, do I do that as a manager? And I think it's helpful for you to have that level of honesty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know at HBS you have been running the career and professional development program for years and years and years. And in the last few years, you've also taken over running the alumni relations side of things as well. Did that period when you took over both, did that feel like an inflection point for you? It seems like it would be a shift. And how did you manage that shift?
I'm still managing it. It's only been a year. It's different for me because on the career side, I've done almost all the hiring. So it's been a team I have selected and grown with. And it's been a long time since I joined a team. So that's been new. I think back to my P&G days. I absolutely joined a team. How did I do it? I went on shifts. I did all the jobs, learned what folks did at a molecular level. And I can't do that now. I can't do the equivalent of going on shifts. So I have to listen better. I have to reserve judgment. I'm very impatient and that's hard. So feedback I've gotten for pretty much my entire professional career. And you sort of wonder, why does my boss even try to give me this feedback anymore? It's like, clearly she can't do it, but it's like, slow down, Kristen, take a beat, let folks struggle with it for a while, because my inclination is to just go solve it. And that's terrible. I should let people think about it. So I'm working on that. And I think being a new team and being folks who don't know me as well, it's a better way to test that theory that I should let people just sit with it a little bit longer and let them think about how they would fix it. And then if there's a genuine barrier, I can jump in and try and get rid of it. But that part's been hard for me.
I'm wondering, at this stage in your career, being so successful, it does seem like you very much still have a growth mindset, that you took on this new position, learning and growing new muscles. Is that something that's always been integral to the way you've approached your career?
Yeah. I feel like there's been things at work that I've been curious about and I've just dabbled in. So even before I took over alumni relations, I remember being curious about development. I'm like, what do you do? What do those visits look like? So, we have such a nice, accommodating team. And one of the gentlemen who works on the development side was like, yeah, you can tag along with me and come on the visits. And I think what surprised me is they're just conversations the way I have conversations with alumni. And I think it just opened my eyes to how relevant the work of coaching is across the school. There's so much that happens just by listening and paying attention to what people care about. And that's been my training. What matters most to you? That's what I'm going to listen for. And I would say our best development officers are good at that too. So there's way more synergy than I would have expected.
I keep talking about mess. I need to find, it sounds like it's all dire. I've also found from mess, amazing things happen. It's the challenges in life that lead to growth, but it is messy in almost all sectors right now. It's always messy as we grow and learn. But I feel like the last 5 years, with AI disrupting things, tech being so uncertain, the business markets being in flux, are you seeing shifts in terms of the culture of career development and how it's approached at HBS?
We've integrated it more into the curriculum, and it's not something that's ancillary that you think about after class. It is what we all do. We think about what's important to us. Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? So that's been a shift in the past year or so, because they don't have the mind space to create those pockets of opportunity to go explore something in their careers. So that's been massive. And then I think finally this summer, we're figuring out, all right, here's how we're going to use AI. This is how it's going to amplify what we do, simplify what we do. We did an AI Academy as a team, and 2 faculty members led us through a mini curriculum. And most of the curriculum is about change management. Let's face it, there's a lot of fear when it comes to, if I embrace this AI, am I putting myself out of a job? So we don't want people to be afraid of it. We want them to try it and see how it helps. So last night and today, I was building a GPT agent for our students, because we have so much information. There's so much out there. It's hard to find. So if we build an agent that knows everything and we test it with all the different questions they can ask, then they can use us, the humans, for those higher order questions that are easily answered by a GPT agent. And we can get into the deeper stuff of what brings them meaning which I don't think you can get with a ChatGPT agent.
Absolutely. Your team has so much expertise in research and career reinvention. For my audience who are mid-career, senior career, starting to think about shifting and pivoting, do you have top 3 resources you'd recommend they check out?
So there's a gentleman named Jeremy who runs a company called the LinkedIn Guys, and he is so good, and he's accessible to anybody. He has a master class. It's accessible. So take his master class and use his tips, because he just has shortcuts where you could waste a lot of time doing things that he'll just show you a loop around. So that's one that's accessible to anybody. The types of at least AI tools that I think everyone should be using. Lovable is really good for presentations. So if you are struggling to put thoughts on a page, throw them into Lovable. It's quite good. And I think makes your ideas pop in a way that you probably can't do if you're in PowerPoint. So between the LinkedIn Guys, Lovable, I think the third thing is being very intentional about your strengths and leading from a position of strength if you're trying to make a switch, because the types of opportunities that you're going after, if you can't lean into your strengths, it just kind of compounds the anxiety of making a big change. And being honest about what you're really good at and the elements that you want to make sure you retain in this next move. And then using market feedback as data, not as a personal affront to you as a human. So if you're putting 6 applications out there and you're getting the interview, but then you're not getting on to the second level, my guess is you're doing something in the interview that you might need to course correct. Yeah. So it's just using, if you say you're applying to hundreds of jobs, I'm going to stop you right there. You're doing it wrong. So it's being targeted in your approach, probably finding a human before you even apply, and being efficient with your time. It's not all a numbers game. It is to some degree. You need enough of a funnel, but just throwing applications out there is probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kristen. Final question. So we've covered a lot in this conversation and you've shared so much. For my listeners, if there were just one takeaway, if there could only be one takeaway they take away from what you've shared today, do you have any one big piece of advice for them?
It's going to be long, but it is one piece of advice. So think about someone who thinks you're awesome, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or even a kid that of yours or somebody else that thinks you walk on water, and look at yourself through their eyes, because that's how most people probably see you. And that person won't second guess you. That person thinks you can literally do anything, and replacing whatever voice in your head is telling you you can't with that person's voice makes a world of a difference.
Kristen Fitzpatrick, thank you so much for the conversation today.
It was fun.
And that was not a long answer. So thank you. I so appreciated it.